Hello, everyone in the Del Mar Center, online, and later on YouTube. My name is Linda McCabe. I am chair of the Sea Ranch Forum, and today we are working with the Sea Ranch Association's Utilities Committee to present to you Surviving the Next Electricity Outage. Before we start, a few safety measures. For those in the hall, these doors are exits. If you need to use the bathroom, it is across the sidewalk over there. And may we never need to use it, there is an AED on the wall. I want to also announce that this past Tuesday, the Sea Ranch Forum had an event with Sonoma County Supervisor Linda Hopkins here, and we had representatives from a numerous amount of health and public safety agencies. That recording is now online, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, the Sea Ranch Forum, and that's the most recent upload. So you can watch it there. It's really good. And we talked about how long people on this coast were without electricity. And so trying to help people anticipate the next time it may happen, if it's a couple hours or a couple days, we don't know. That's what this forum is about. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Ruffolo, the chair of the Utilities Committee.
That good? Try not to turn my back on the people on Zoom. So I'm not going to look there. All right. Welcome everyone to our forum on surviving the next power outage. The Sea Ranch Association Utilities Committee is a group of volunteers who advises the board of the association on policy matters dealing with utilities, including electricity, water, wastewater, telecommunications, Sea Ranch Connect, and so on. And one of the things we think about a lot and work on is resiliency of the community as a whole, of the association in particular. And given the experience of the power outage of January after, what was it, 8 atmospheric rivers hit us one after another, and some of us were in the dark for 10 days, we're also interested in sharing our experiences and the community's experiences about how we got by and preparing for the next one. So today we're going to share findings from a survey of sea ranchers and the learnings from that survey. We're going to help you choose additional power sources to keep you going during the next outage. And it doesn't have to necessarily be winter storms. It could be those prescriptive power preventative power shutoffs, PSPs, one of PG&E's specials that could come in the summer. We could have an earthquake. There could be an actual fire. There's a lot of reasons we might be without power for a good long time here on the coast. And so we want to help everyone make the best choices you need to understand about the basic electricity concepts and the use of how different devices in your home use power, how much power they use, to help you think about what kind of backup system is really appropriate for your home. And then we'll have a Q&A session, questions and answers, and invite further discussion and feedback. So we think this will take roughly an hour, just shy of an hour. Hope you can stay with us till the very end because we have raffle prizes. And Elizabeth standing there with the bag on her arm. She's not a bag lady. She is a bona fide resident of the Sea Ranch. and she has little pieces of paper, and you need to put your name on the piece of paper and put it in Elizabeth's bag to be eligible for the raffle. So don't forget to do that. Okay. I know this wrecks my hair, and I really worked hard on it today. So, how many of you wore one of these for some period of time in January? Yeah, pretty good show of hands. I don't think people on Zoom are actually going to raise their hands. How many got tired of pouring gasoline or into your generator in the rain, or trying to refill your propane tank? Yeah, a few hands, yes, it was a drag, huh? How about tripping over extension cords or dragging that generator back and forth and back and forth? Yes. Fun, right? Okay. How many of you were here for the entire 10 days of the power outage? Yeah, hardcore. How many of you bugged out to another home? Smart. Good for you. How many of you want to get something useful from this workshop? Yay, everybody. Good. All right. So to start giving you useful information, I'm going to turn it over to our friend Peter Kools, who is a member of our Utilities Committee, and he's going to talk to you about lessons learned and stories shared by our fellow Sea Ranchers.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll try and use the microphone appropriately. So if you can't hear me on Zoom, please let me know somehow. So let's talk about what we learned from the January storms, and for Sea Ranchers, the 10-day outage. And for those in the Wallala Point Arena community, it was more like 14 days in some areas. In February, we solicited input via 2 info alert postings from Sea Ranch members willing to share their experiences during the January storms. We received 37 responses. Thanks to those of you willing to take the time to share it with us. Responders included full-timers, part-timers, people who stayed for the duration, people who bugged out, rental owners, folks with generators, folks without generators, some people with batteries, really a full spectrum of possibilities. So what were the key learnings from that information? Reviewing the responses, we identified 5 major themes: being of assistance to your neighbors, understanding your home's electrical and mechanical systems, being prepared to utilize whatever backup power sources you have, planning and preparing for the inevitable power outages while living on the coast, and keeping yourself and your family safe. We'll discuss each of these in some detail. So look around. Even though it may feel like you're alone living by yourself, there are others in homes near you, maybe across the street, across the meadow, next door. You are not actually alone. There were numerous stories of neighbors sharing with each other. People with backup power provided refrigerator space, device and computer charging, internet access, hot water, and cooking facilities to their neighbors. There were examples of generators being carried back and forth between houses to cool someone's refrigerator. People with gas-powered cars were driving those with their dead electric cars into town for groceries, and people with heat opening their homes to others. And it went on and on. And although there were intermittent generator issues, many folks used the Del Mar and Olson facilities at Sea Ranch for the same purpose and gained a stronger sense of community from the experience. Understanding where your critical electrical and mechanical systems are and how they operate or don't during a power outage was a key highlight in the responses. One that struck home particularly was for those who have electrically powered septic systems, have a plan for when the power goes out. Do you know where your electrical panel is located? Do you know what it looks like? Is it inside or outside? Is it hidden behind a bookcase or a stack of boxes, never accessed in 10 years? Make sure you know where it is, how to get it open, and how to access the circuit breakers. If you have backup power, you should turn off non-essential circuits. Suggestions include turning off your hot tub, truly a bummer, electric water heater, electric heaters, and forced air furnace. While the power is out, don't use high power electrical appliances like an oven, an induction cooktop, washer, dryer, blow dryers, or the dishwasher. Minimize your use of the microwave oven, incandescent and halogen lighting, although LEDs are great. And don't charge your car off your backup power unless you have a surplus of solar generation, which is definitely something that did not happen in January. When PG&E did get the power back on, it bounced numerous times, had brownouts, and generally had nastiness associated with electrical devices. So protect your sensitive electronics by turning those circuit breakers off, things like for the washer, the dryer, the electric oven, the TV, et cetera. And then wait to turn them back on until the power has stabilized, perhaps for an hour or more. Garage doors with electric openers are designed to be opened when the power is out. Some have a manual release, like you see in this photo. Pull the cord to disengage the opener, and then the door should be liftable. Newer openers are required to have a backup battery sufficient to open the door when the power is out. Many Sea Ranch garage doors are heavier than typical because of the cedar cladding required. You should have the tracks lubricated and the spring tension adjusted periodically so the door can be opened by hand. And if your opener has a battery, test it and make sure it still holds enough charge to actually open the door. If you have backup power, know how to use it. There may be work required to set up, as Jennifer alluded to, gasoline, cords, etc. For example, moving that portable generator outside and away from the house, running the extension cords, fueling the generator. Perhaps you have a whole house generator. Many of us quickly learn to run these for 2 to 3 hours in the morning, then turn them off, turn them back on for 2 to 3 hours in the evening so that you weren't burning through a tank of propane in 4 or 5 days. Several folks also suggested checking the oil on your generator daily. Be sure here as well to turn off those non-essential circuits, which will reduce generator fuel consumption. Anticipate fuel shortages. While several propane suppliers were able to make deliveries during the storm, there were many stories of people having their tanks run dry and not being able to get a delivery. We were lucky enough that Caltrans and the local fire departments did an amazing effort to keep the roads as clear as they did so that people could get around, but that's not going to be the norm in all situations. Finally, there were numerous examples of equipment failure during the storm. My generator didn't start, or it didn't start on day 2, etc. So anticipate failures by having a backup plan that does not include a service technician showing up at your house during the storm. If you or a family member has electrically powered medical equipment and use of that equipment is mandatory, have a battery or reliable backup power, or a plan to relocate somewhere with power. Scott's going to talk about one solution that he's put together for this purpose in a few minutes. It's difficult to emphasize how important having a plan is. Numerous responders shared their plans, and many others without plans shared their struggles. Suggestions include emergency equipment for lighting, headlamps are a big winner, spare batteries, well-stocked first aid kits, spare blankets, and particularly firewood. If you know a storm is coming, fuel or charge your vehicles and batteries in advance. Get your propane tank filled if possible. Get your backup power system ready to go, and move your cars out of the garage. The Sea Ranch website has an emergencies page which has many more resources available to help plan and prepare for the next outage. Very unfortunately, there were fatalities during the storm due to improper portable generator use. All generators must be outside away from the doors, windows, vents, and garage. If you smell exhaust in the house or in the garage, the generator is too close and needs to be moved. We encourage you to invest time and energy in planning ahead. There will be more storms and more power outages. Having a plan and being prepared will enable you to safely and comfortably ride out the next event. We have handouts available for pickup after the forum that include this information. And as Jennifer mentioned, we will take questions at the end of the forum as well. Please join me in welcoming Rich Hughes, 2023 Sea Rancher of the Year. Rich is leading our audience experience segment.
I hate you. Thank you very much. We want to kind of put a personality to this data that Peter, I think, beautifully summarized. And so we got a few short stories, and they're very short, of actual experiences, and people want to share what they found out. And is Buddy here? Buddy is going to be our first experience share. I gave him a 3-minute time limit. He said he was a trial attorney. He could do it easily. Welcome.
I am Buddy Warner. I've owned a home in Sea Ranch since 2006 and lived here full time since 2020 when the pandemic started. Those little portable generators that you saw on the slides, that's what we own. When the power went out, we wheeled it out of the garage and put it in our courtyard. It went underneath the eave. We fired it up without too much difficulty. We ran extension cords into the house, one through the garage that power and attached that to a power strip. And for that, we plugged into the kitchen and some lights in the kitchen. And the other power strip went through the front door. And that one we hooked up to the internet and our TV. We have a wood burning stove for heat, so we were fine. Now, one thing that was mentioned was that you can trip over extension cords, and that's something we were worried about. So after this whole thing was over, I called MD Electric and they had them rewire our house. And it cost about $2,000. And they installed a second panel next to the original panel. And when if there's a power outage, what I'll do is I'll plug my generator into a special outlet in the courtyard. You saw how their courtyard worked. And that outlet goes underneath the house and into this new panel they put in. There's 6 switches that you flip. And then that sends power to 6 of the 12 circuits in the house. And I store 5 5-gallon propane tanks and 1 5-gallon can of gasoline to run my generator. And that will be enough for about a week. It seems, based on last time. How am I doing on time? All right. Hard to get a lawyer to shut up. Okay. So the thing, you're going to hear lots of different solutions. The thing I will say about my solution is it's the least expensive and in some ways the most reliable, because it costs the total thing, wiring the house and the generator cost about $3,000. And then you've got to buy some propane tanks. Those are pretty cheap at Costco, which is now selling 10-gallon tanks, I noticed. And then you don't have to worry about the storm hits, and just at that moment, your house propane tank was at its lowest point and you don't have any propane. Or it was 25% full and you used it up real quickly. So that way, you know that this propane is dedicated to running your generator when there's a power outage, and it'll always be there. In the question and answer session or afterwards, happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Our next presenter is a neighbor, a board member, and I just want you to guess what he's going to be presenting on. And I'm so excited that we're talking about CPAP machines. We're going to plug this in to see if it works. Skotsky, there he is. Good.
Toys. Rich is taller than me. All right. Am I good, Jay? You can see me. All right. Any CPAP, BiPAP? Good. Yeah. We get to that point in our life where we need those. And for those of us that have them, living without power for extended period of time becomes a challenge for those of us who like to breathe at night. You know, our little mechanical devices provide us with a pretty restful night's sleep. And without it, I probably sound like a freight train and choke. And yeah, it's not fun. So during the January storms, I talked with 3 Sea Ranch members. One of them happens to be sitting over there, about the fact that you don't need to run a big generator to run your CPAP. I actually stumbled on this solution because we like to go camping and I needed my CPAP in my tent. After I had my little glass of wine and crawl in the tent and put my CPAP on, flip the battery on, and I would get a good night's sleep. So here we go. So I've got a way for you to keep your CPAP running and some tips on how to make the battery or get the most out of the battery. We're on the right slide. All right. So wasn't the time limit, was it? So my prop. So this weighs about as much as a gallon of milk. It is, I got this off of Amazon. It's a Rock Pals 300. I don't know why it's 300 because it provides 280 watt hours of electricity. This has DC outputs, which we're going to talk about in a minute for CPAP. It has a car charger and it has an AC outlet. So even if you don't use a CPAP or BiPAP, if you hang on to the last slide, you're going to get something out of this presentation. Oh, and it's got a bunch of USB ports on it as well. So you can plug in your and your friends' phones and charge those up as well. So this is multi-purpose, but it had a singular purpose for me, and that was to run my CPAP at night. Most effectively use this. That battery well, your CPAP machine comes with a gigantic, it's not a wall wart because it didn't go into the wall, but it's a AC to DC transformer. So it's going to take the 120 volt AC coming out of your wall. It's going to do no electrical engineering stuff. It's going to magic. It's going to go to DC at 24 volts and run your CPAP machine. Turns out converting to AC to DC is not efficient. So it turns out the people at the good ResMed company created a DC to DC converter. Battery's DC, right? It's not coming out of the wall. And it's got a little 12 volt thing. I guess this is for people who want to put their CPAP in the car and sleep. I don't know, but it has a plug that goes into the CPAP. So now we can use the battery DC. It's going to change it to the right voltage to go DC into the CPAP, and everything is groovy. All right. Yes. Okay. Now we get to how to make this most efficient. So our little CPAP devices have some settings on them. 2 of them make for a, I guess, more restful night's sleep. It has a tube heater, so instead of getting cold air blasted into your face, because some of us like to sleep with the windows open, you can actually set the tube heat so that you get warm air to breathe. The other thing it has is a humidifier. So it's got a tank of water, fill it up with water, and you get, you get moist air to breathe. However, these 2 things use electricity, right? None of it's for free. It's got a heater that runs the humidifier, and it runs electricity through a coil through the tube to heat the tube up. So all of that sucks battery power. It's not a lot, but I'll get to the math in a minute. So my advice to you, I went to the little settings and oh, this is cool. You can turn the tube heat off. Okay, you gotta breathe cold air, but it's an emergency, so you gotta handle that. The other thing you can do is turn the humidifier off. You can still put water in it. It works okay, but have a glass of water next to the bedside because you're going to have cotton mouth. You're just going to wake up with a dry mouth. There's no avoiding that. But doing those 2 things will significantly reduce the amount of electricity that the battery provides to the CPAP. So how long is it going to last? If you disable those two features, I'm not going to make you do the math, but a 280 watt hour battery, the average power consumption that the CPAP's going to need with those two things turned off is about 12 watts. So that works out to about 23 hours of running your CPAP. I get about 7 hours of sleep a night. You get 3 nights of sleep before you have to run this down to a rec center and charge it back up again. If you have both of those features on, it's 40 watts. So you get probably close to 1 night's sleep. So it's a great trade-off. 3 nights versus 1 night. Yeah, you got a little discomfort while you're sleeping, but you know, it's not a big deal. Okay. So there is an option when the sun's shining, which it didn't during our bomb cyclones in January. There is, I brought it up here. There's actually a 100-watt solar panel that goes with it. You can unfold that. It actually like sits quite nicely in my window seat. I can point it towards the sun, plug it into the battery, and it will recharge the battery during the day. And that runs about $150. So you can use the sun to recharge it. It's not really fast, but it will put power back in. And for those of you who hung with me, turns out I plugged this little guy into a space heater out in my studio. The space heater, when the fan was on, so the propane unit is heating, running the fan, putting heat in my studio, it was consuming about 30 watts of electricity. And that's AC. I took the AC plug out of the wall and plugged it into the battery. Difficult to know how long that's going to last, but you know, you can run other appliances with this. You're not going to run a coffee maker. You're not going to run a refrigerator. But small electronics, phones, CPAPs, you know, you could probably walk through your house and find a couple of things that will work on this. I think it puts out a maximum of about 100 watts. So you can use it for many other purposes other than just a CPAP. So to conclude, don't, as one of my friends did, burn up a whole tank of propane running a CPAP machine.
Now he tells me I had the whole damn generator running all night to sleep. Our last little episode is really one that comes from somebody who is mechanically an idiot, and that's me. And I got a whole house generator, and one of the mistakes I made is not learning how to turn it on and off if I wanted to ration it. And so it went on. I found we had to ration. We only had 20% propane. So I found out that was a late kind of wake up call. Now, fortunately, I didn't learn it because there was a 200-page manual that I couldn't read. But I have a bright wife who can fix stuff. And so what I did is I made sure she had the right raincoat. Listen, I was doing anything. I gave her one of those headlamps so it could blink on and off. I made sure that she had a decent hat. It was an Arkansas Razorback pig hat, but it really spills water. And Sandy learned how to turn it on and turn it off. And I always felt bad when she'd go out, 4 times a day to turn it on and off, but not that bad that I would learn anything. And so that's what we learned. And I can't imagine that I was so idiotic that I wouldn't test it, how to turn it on and off, that it didn't do it on its own. But fortunately, Sandy did that. So that's our experience. We'll have an opportunity at the end of the presentations to share other experiences in the Q&A period. But that's 3 different episodes, 2 very bright people approaching it, and then 1 dullard me. So now, Dan, going to give you a brief expose to Electricity 101.
It is important to have a basic understanding of your home's electrical system and the basic terms used to define it. Oop. It's not scrolling. A technical glitch.
Who would know?
Okay. There are two types of circuit breaker panels: the service entrance panel, which is located on an exterior wall of your home, and some panels which can be found inside your home. It is important to have all the circuits accurately labeled in case of an emergency, such as if you have a leaking water heater, you'd want to shut off the water first and then shut off the electricity so you don't have a short circuit. Here are a few of the terms used to describe electrical energy and how it is measured. Power is measured in watts and is a result of amps multiplied by volts. His name is Watt, James Watt. Energy is power expressed in watts multiplied by time and hours and is measured in kilowatt hours. PG&E charges you around 40 cents per kilowatt hour, depending upon your rate plan, and a typical home uses around 30 kilowatt hours per day. How can you best visualize a kilowatt hour? 1 watt is used by idling cell phone chargers and small LED night lights, so you can use these for a long time without using a lot of energy. $10 watts is the power used by a tablet charger, small tabletop fan, or LED bulbs. Devices which use 100 watts are old incandescent light bulbs, a 55-inch LED TV, and a desktop computer. Clothes dryers, dishwashers, and microwaves are typical in this 1,000-watt category. Here is a label for a refrigerator. These labels can be deceiving since they show maximum values, even if the unit is not always running. This label shows that it runs at 115 volts. The maximum flow is 7.1 amps, which means that the total power used is 816 watts. However, your fridge only runs approximately 30% of the time, and the ice maker and frost cycle don't operate as often as that. And with that, I will now turn it over to Klaus, who will provide information on how to bridge the gap when the power is out.
Thank you, Dan. That was nice. Can I have a show of hands for a person who has this, a solar voltaic panel system? Oh, that's quite a few. Thank you. And who has that attached to it, a storage system? Okay. And who has this? A simple generator. We have the hand of, okay, great. And now a small or medium-sized battery. Who has that? Okay, good. So we're talking about now what we should be going for. What's the best thing for us? There are various options that we have. But before we get into that, let's look at two basic facts. Now, Dan mentioned one of them already. 1 kilowatt hour costs about 40 cents. That's something that we need to just simply understand. A typical household uses 1,000 kilowatt hours per month. That's $400 right there. Now, a storage, the second fact is a storage system. If we want to store 1 kilowatt hour that would cost roughly $1,000 plus or minus. So keep that in mind. That's a rule of thumb. So now we should know that storage batteries are really only good if they are actually used. Otherwise they are dead material. They don't generate income. They are not like solar panels, they are just there. And even though we've had this this very bad period in January, the reality is that out of 365 days in a year, maybe 10 are that bad. And the other 355, we don't need that storage system. And that's just a fact. And so we want to avoid an excessive expense for energy storage. The objectives should then be, and that's what we're talking about in this presentation, that we understand our comfort level. We need to know, what do we really think is important that we have during a time of outage? Do we want to use the hot tub? Probably not. Do we need space heating? It all depends. And everybody is different in that regard. Now, the first thing we need to focus on is what we already discussed, that our electrical devices, that our medical devices are covered properly, that we need to, some of us need that, and that's very important. We also want to minimize cost. We want to minimize, or we want to understand how difficult it is to install and to use these systems. And we already heard this generator is not that easy to use for some people. And we get into that some more, I have some examples. We also want to minimize environmental harm. That is very clear. So now, what are the options for a backup power? We have a generator. We talked about that. Then there are small stationary batteries. Now, these are not as small as what we just saw from Scott. So a little bigger than that. And then medium-sized storage batteries that are about 5 to 8 kilowatt hours in size. And then we, of course, have the optional generator to recharge a battery. That is important. So we'll talk about that, so that we can bridge over a long period of time. And finally, talking about a transfer switch, that's the thing that also Scott mentioned. We have one here, and you can take a look at that later, and I'll discuss this in a few minutes. And then we have a fully automated solar and storage system, and we talk about how good it is and what the shortcomings are of it, if any, and so get an idea whether we really want to invest in this kind of thing or in something less expensive. So here, the simplest, least expensive option is obviously our generator, the normal generator. Now, they come in various size and various price ranges. And this one here on the left, I purchased at JR's, and I think I paid about $500 for it. So it's not that expensive at all. The one on the right is a little more expensive. It has some features that are nice. And so you get that at Costco, I believe, and many other places. Now, let's talk about the generator a little more. Let's look at it in some depth. So the cost range, as I said, is about $400 to $3,000, depending on the size and on the comfort of it. What can it do? Now, it powers everything that is not hardwired into your house, meaning everything that you normally plug into an outlet. So your system, your TV system, and all of that, you plug into an outlet. You can use that very easily. Even the refrigerator is plugged into an outlet. So you can plug that into a generator as well with an extension cord. So how convenient is it? It is kind of cumbersome. It really is. And it requires extension cords, as was mentioned. Now, let me talk a little bit more about the cumbersome part. This is the thing that I got a little while ago. And, getting it out of the box, the first thing was that I had to unpack it and mount the wheels. That was not that easy, actually. Okay, and then they told me to fill in oil into the engine. So that you need to do. Need to find out where to put that, where to do that. And then you have, it's a hybrid thing. I mean, they say it here clearly, hybrid. And hybrid means it can use either propane or gasoline. And I then decided to use gasoline because it was easier to fill gasoline into, to find out where to put it in. It's right up here at the top of it. Okay, so did that. And then you need to find out the choke, and you need to find out the gas valve or the fuel valve, and then a pulley somewhere here is a pulley, just like in a lawnmower, and then you pull and you pull and you pull and nothing happens. And it really was frustrating. And then finally I learned, oh yeah, there is a little battery in this thing, a 12-volt battery. And it turned out it was dead. And so I had to actually buy a new battery because I had no way of charging the dead battery there. So that cost me about $30, so not that much. And then finally it was running. I got it running. Well, and then I found out, well, you have to connect it at that point. The yellow cord is clear, you plug it in. And then, this thing is loud. And so I bought a sheet of 4x8 foot plywood and built a housing around it. And that takes care of the noise actually quite well and costs very little. But, it's a lot of work to do that. Now, I'm not belittling the generator. It is a very important option to have and to keep. And you'll understand why that is a little later. Now, again, we had this here before. We fill the slide, other remarks. This generator must be outside, as we learned, and we can't overemphasize that. So please make sure that you never, ever use a generator inside or inside the garage. It's just like, committing suicide. Now, it needs maintenance. It's either on or off, and that's very important. If you want to use your let's say your internet system or your Wi-Fi telephone, whatever it is, you need to turn on this generator first, and then you have the power for it. And then you feed it with fuel. And actually it's noisy usually, and it's thirsty. It uses a lot of fuel. When it's running full time, it uses about 1 gallon of propane. Not 1 gallon, one container of propane. It's about 5 gallons. For a 24-hour period of running. So, and then it's empty. And so it comes hybrid, gasoline or propane, and it's about the same efficiency in either. And then it comes with an auto starter if you pay more money. And if you pay even more money, you do get some lower noise versions, but it still is noisy. It's just the way it is. Now, let's go from the least expensive to the most expensive version. And then we end up in the middle. The most expensive is this option here. It is a fully automated solar plus storage system. What will that cost? Well, we know it costs about anywhere between $25,000 and $40,000. And some of that Uncle Sam pays with, but still it costs a lot of money. Now, what can it do? Of course, it's fully automated. It can sell, you can even use it to sell energy to PG&E, although won't get into the details of that, and it's not that great. And I wouldn't buy it for that reason. So anyway, but it's okay for guests. And that may be important for some of you, especially for those who have your house on the SDR market, short-term rental market. And you have guests there, and they can use this thing, and they can feel comfortable doing a power outage. Okay, convenience to use. Obviously, it is very convenient. It has the full grid independence until the battery is dead. But let's talk about that. So the remarks for this system would be that we over rely on that. That maybe we have what happened in January, that there was no sunshine, and not only for 1 day, but for 2 days and for 3 days. And after some time, there was no more power in the battery, and you are just as much out of luck as people who didn't have that fancy system. So let's look a little bit closer. What is it? How do we actually consume energy? And for this, a solar system typically consists of several panels. Here is one in this example. And we are looking at first at how much energy will one solar panel, one of the 12 or 15 or so that you have on your roof, will that collect on a day? Now, on a typical winter day, you collect somewhere around 1 to 1.5 kilowatt hours of energy with one panel. On a typical summer day, it's a little more. It's about 2 to 2.5 kilowatt hours per panel per day. So if we have a system with a few panels, let's say on average, we may be collecting and expecting about 12 kilowatt hours on a typical day. Let's use that as a rule of thumb to see now how quickly do I spend 12 kilowatt hours. That is, we need to know that. We need to be conscious of that. So let's start with those items that use very little power. For example, the lighting that we have, just on average, we use no more than about 0.5 kilowatt hours per day for lighting. That's it. So we can leave our lights on for a long time, and that's not the problem, lighting. The internet and the router also are not the problem. They use about 0.3 kilowatt hours per day. The small medical devices, the CPAP that we heard about, that in itself is also not very much. It's about 0.1 kilowatt hours per day, or maybe a little more depending on how you use it. Watching TV is not that power consuming, about 0.2. In fact, to keep the TV plugged in, so all these together are no more than about 1.1 kilowatt hours per day. So this big battery that we have there will be good for a long time. But then there are other uses of power that are consuming a little more. Just the standby of the TV system alone uses about 0.5 kilowatt hours per day. So the convenient fact that when you turn on the TV, it comes right on, rather than you plug it back in and you let it start up. So the audio equipment standby, some of us have audio equipment. It's about 0.3 kilowatt hours per day. So let's continue. Interestingly, if you use the laptop a lot, as I do, it is not insignificant. It's about 0.3 kilowatt hours per day just for the laptop to charge it. And now comes the refrigerator. The refrigerator is actually a significant consumption. But I have in two homes, the Sunnyvale home and here in Sea Ranch, in total four refrigerators. One, the least one, the best one is in my garage in Sunnyvale. That uses no more than 0.5 kilowatt hours per day. And when we had a power outage in Sunnyvale in March, similar to what you had in January, by the way, I used my battery for the refrigerator and found out that after a few hours, the battery was dead. That refrigerator, this old clunker that we had in our kitchen there, uses 5.5 kilowatt hours per day. And it really pays just to look at getting a new refrigerator. Just look at the cost of what you're saving between 1.4 for a good new refrigerator and about 5.4 kilowatt hours per day used. That's about 4 kilowatt hours per day difference. Times 365, that would be about, what is it, about 2,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is about, $400, something like that. So it adds up in terms of even of dollars. So if you can get a new refrigerator and have an old one, that would be something to do. So, but again, all of these together still only add up to about 3.6 kilowatt hours per day. That is still way within these 12 that our solar system collects. But let's look at some more items that we have. We have a washer, a clothes washer. If you use that for just 1 hour, we use another kilowatt hour. If we use our dryer, with electric dryer, the old type, then we use 5 kilowatt hours just for that use. So better not use it during a power outage. If we cook a meal on our electric cooktop, that uses another 3 kilowatt hours, just that. And if you use a dishwasher, it's another 2 kilowatt hours. If we use the hot water for a shower or to wash dishes or something, that is a biggie. That's about 9 kilowatt hours per day. So if we add that up, we already get to 20, and we are way over our 12 kilowatt hours. So let's continue. Baseboard heaters. Many of us have electric baseboard heaters in our house. If you use that, 12 kilowatt hours per day, easily. The hot tub, of course, is a no-no. We know that, 15. And what happens if you use that? Well, the lights go out, and then you're stuck. So are there really more reasonable options that we can use? And I'm not presenting something that I think is a better option. And that would be a small battery, about 6 kilowatt hours in total. And we can get different kinds. This one here, this picture here shows how small it is because of the chair. And this is a little larger. You can get that at Costco. So, and in other places. So again, here is a generator and the battery side by side, and showing you the size difference. Now so it's small and it's very practical also for other uses. I mentioned that in 355 days out of the year, this thing is not used for anything. So you can still use it. If you have a building project in your yard and you need a power tool somewhere, you can wheel this thing to where it is and use it. And I've done that, and it's quite convenient. So the cost is about $6,000 to $8,000 for that. And what can it do? It can run your refrigerator, if it's a fairly new one, the internet, the TV, lights, your septic tank, your septic pump, I mean, and a small medical device for about 2 days until it runs dry. That's not bad. And again, for $6,000 to $8,000. The convenience to use, well, it's quiet. You can use it indoors. In fact, you have to use it indoors because it has these lithium-ion batteries, and they don't like moisture, so you don't want rain on it. And it's eco-friendly, and you can use it for power tools. Remarks: no installation. This thing comes out of the box with the wheels, and it even comes charged. So with 6 kilowatt hours, so you can immediately get it out of the box and plug something in and be in business. You can also charge this battery with your generator. And that's very important because you don't know how long a power outage will last. It could last for 2 days and you're fine. But after 2 days, you need to do something. You need to recharge it. So you use your generator, costing $600, to recharge this battery here that costs $6,000. So it's still a good deal. Now you can also, and I'll discuss this here. This is a very important feature of the battery. You can, on one side, charge this battery always from 120 volts from the outlet in your house, and unless there is a power outage, and then you can have your refrigerator run from this battery. And I do that when I leave my house in Sea Ranch. The refrigerator is running from this battery here. And when there is a power outage, the refrigerator will not know the difference because it is continually fed by the battery here. And that could be for an outage of at least 3 days. Okay, so now people who are not primarily concerned about the refrigerator can actually buy and use a smaller battery. And I'm thinking that 0.8 to 1.5 kilowatt hours is sufficient. Okay, that will cost you only, well, somewhere around $1,000. Okay, now, so much less. And what can that do? It can run your small medical device, the internet, and some lights in your house for about 1 day. Not a bad option. Convenience to use, it's quiet, it's indoors, it's portable, and it's a 120 volt outlet, so it feeds anything that has 120 volts. Remarks? You could probably augment this with a generator also, and charge it with the solar collector if you add another $500, or something like what Bert showed here. Now, there are many vendors for these kind of batteries of about 1 kilowatt hour storage. This is a Yeti one, this is an EcoFloor, there are maybe 30 on the internet that you could choose from. Now, talking about a transfer switch. This switch was mentioned before. It is really called, it is a very convenient thing. This is something that you connect to your panel, and it's done very easily. But you can either have your battery connect to your entire circuit breaker panel in the house, or you can have it connected only to a select number of switches, of breakers. And that's this unit that I actually here, I brought one of these, and you can, after the meeting, you can come and take a look at it, how simple and easy it is. And so it looks like this, and costs about $300. And the installation is easy for an electrician or even for a handyman. I mean, I'm not an electrician, and I did it myself, and it took me a couple of hours or 3 hours or something like that. So it's not a big deal. You have the power panel here, the electric power panel, and you take the extra panel off, this thing here, take it off, and then you have all these wires here, and it connects to those circuits that are low power that you want. You take the black panel, I don't want to get into the details because it's boring, but it can be done easily. All right, so that's all I want to know, all I want to communicate. If I'm sure you all have a handyman available, and typically, if he's any good, he can do it for you for maybe $1,000 or a little more. Okay, so here we had that picture again. you can charge this battery with your generator, and it takes about 24 hours runtime of this thing here to use a 5 gallons propane. Now, what are the key learnings? The first key learning in my mind really is an understanding of this 10 days of 365 where we need something. And we don't want to spend $50,000 for just those 10 days. We can. I mean, some people buy an expensive car, some people get around with a cheap car. Now, use your electric use comfort pattern. Know that. That's important. And then we have these options that we discussed. A 6 kilowatt hour battery, that costs about $6,000. It's good for your TV, refrigerator, lights, internet for about 2 days. And if you want to spend less money, only about 1,000, then get the smaller battery, use it for your CPAP, some lights, internet for about 1 day. And then you charge it again. And then if you have either of these two units, get a transfer switch and a generator, and to, in essence, bridge over any amount of time, and not just 1 or 2 days. Now that's really very important, because the power outage that we had in Sunnyvale, I thought it would last for only 2 days. Well, it lasted for 3. And after 2 days, or after even 1 day, I was out of luck. I was out of power because I didn't have prepared. I didn't have a generator to back it up. I didn't have anything. So it was just as bad as, being, in fact, I drove up to Sea Ranch from then. And so anyway, so this is it. And if you want to see the transfer switch, I'm not selling it. I'm just showing it. I'm not in the business of that either. But I want to say thank you to those of us who helped us for this presentation, Jennifer and Hall Kelley. Is he here? Yeah. Thank you for helping. That was really good. Rich Hughes, Peter Kools, Dan Wood, Scott Nevin, and it was really a good cooperative work. Thank you.
Thank you to Klaus, Peter, Dan, Rich, Scott, and Hall for putting this together and really showing us what it takes to get your act together for the next power outage. Before we break for the Q&A, I wanted to introduce Meri Issel. She's a sea rancher who retired from PG&E. She's sitting right up here, and she's going to join us with the Q&A if you have questions for someone who knows a lot about how PG&E responds to disasters. Meri calls herself she's self-described as an emergency preparedness geek. Her words, not mine. So Meri is another resource here to help us think about how to get ready for the next power outage and how PG&E decides and prioritizes amongst the wreckage out there for where to go first and how to deploy their resources. So I'd like all of our panelists to be available up front. And if anybody has questions, please come up to the microphone. I don't know if there's anybody on Zoom who has questions, but we will definitely monitor that. And then we'll have our raffle. So don't forget, stick with us to the end. It'll be worth it. So this comes off if you're more comfortable speaking from the floor. Mark.
Hey, everybody. Great stuff. For connecting the, I think it was a generator to the propane tank. Is that what I saw pictures of?
Not to the propane tank, to the battery.
Okay, so I guess the general question is I saw portable propane tanks being used to supply power, energy. Is there any reason you couldn't connect to your big old propane tank?
Yes, you could do that.
You could do that just with
Absolutely.
a switcher or something? Is
Absolutely, you can do that.
there a reason not to do that?
There is no reason in my mind not to do it.
I'm-
Except that you have to keep your generator somewhat rainproof. You know, you have to find it, if that tank is in an enclosure of some sorts outside the house, that's fine. But you don't want to have rain on it all the time.
Thank you.
So typically those generators with they use the standard grill hose. And if somebody knows something about FPS and IPS and thread pitch and all that kind of stuff, please talk to me, because I'm on a mission to try to figure out how to get my little generator to hook up to my big propane tank. And I have a big bag of brass parts. I have 2 hoses. I've got a shut off valve. I'm a mechanical engineer and I can't figure it out. I think I need to hire a plumber who will then laugh at me.
Plumber will do.
I have a question, well, not a comment. I think the first thing says survive. I don't want to survive. I want to thrive, right? I don't think anybody wants just to survive. So thank you for helping us to thrive and, you know, when there's an outage, so we have comfort. The garage door, it was said that it's required now to have a battery on the garage door. Well, I have that. Be warned that it'll work twice and that's it, or maybe once.
Right.
Yep.
Right, maybe once,
Yeah.
and maybe not even once. Ours just beeped at us for the entire duration.
Right. They're very, very small batteries that the garage door opener companies supply, but I'm sure you could rig up something big if it was real important to you. But I wanted everybody to realize that. What was the other thing I wanted to say?
May I make a comment while you're looking?
Yeah.
With regard to that, it actually takes very little real power to open the garage door because you know it's a maybe 1,000 watts, but only for a very short time, and so the actual power that you're using is very little. What you would do ideally would be to use the circuit that where your garage is powered, like everything that you have in the garage, including the garage door opener, on one of these circuits here.
Transfer switch, yeah.
Then you're fine,
Yeah.
totally fine. And
Well, at the transfer switch, the other average of 6, you're going to have to make choices between internet or your garage door or
well,
your,
you know,
you have, it's limited. It's not your whole house.
no, of course not.
Which brings up,
course not.
I love I was thinking about that. We all have different needs. And as a person that knows a lot of people around Sea Ranch and I help them work on their homes, everybody has different needs. And I think that's the biggest thing is finding out who you are and what you need. I hear people with, oh, I have firewood. Not everybody can keep a fire going in that. And so it goes down in progression to, okay, I can do a little generator like I do because I can pull the ripcord and I have 2 that are linked together and I have all this stuff I can do. But some of my other friends don't want to do that and they need a whole house. And you've pointed this out very well. And it's then it's cost, you know.
Yeah.
Teslas are
It's a
very
cost.
expensive and I'd say $20,000 for a whole house with MD Electric. I just helping them put something in. And I love the 10-365 because it's not going to happen all the time. Thank you.
So
Yeah, my name is George Sokonis.
So George brings up a good point with the battery backup on the garage door. And I believe that new code is due to the fact that in some of the fires that came through in Sonoma County, there was at least one woman that died because she couldn't get her garage door open. So there's a lesson in there, and don't rely on that battery. And if you don't have one, know how to operate the emergency handle, because if you need to evacuate out of this area, you don't want to be trying to figure out, fumbling with that, how to open the garage door. And, you know, if we are under a threat where you've got your to-go bag packed and you need to get out of here, it might behoove you to get somebody to open that garage door for you. And yes, our cedar, I don't have one because I couldn't afford a garage, but our garage doors here at Sea Ranch are really heavy. They're really heavy.
To that point though, if the garage door, if you have it, let's just use the word tuned periodically, then the spring tension is supposed to be adjusted appropriately so that a normal human being can actually lift the door once it's been disengaged. So that is part, you know, every 2, 3, 4 years, you know, get on the schedule and get one of the garage door companies out to adjust your spring tension.
I'll say one more thing about the garage door. Do it today, do it in the summer, go in there and pull it. And if it doesn't work and you can't figure it out, that's the time to work on it, not in a storm. Do it today when you come home. Have your wife do it, or whoever's the weaker of the two sexes, and pull it down and see if you can do it.
Yeah, when Linda and I lived in up on Fountain Grove, when the Tubbs fire came through in 2017, our neighbor ran down the hill in her robe because she could not get her garage door open and get her car out.
Also, you can, if your battery works, open the garage door, take your car out and leave it out.
As long as you're not near a large pine tree that might fall on it. Get those taken out during the summer too, right? I wanted to add one word of caution, because I am aware of some people who have those automatic whole house generators that just flip on, and they're not aware that there's a power outage, and all of a sudden their propane is completely gone because they were just going about their business as usual, washing clothes and cooking dinners and all that. So somehow, if you are contemplating that, or you know people who have that, maybe there's some way that people can be made aware of their power consumption during these times, because as we know, the propane deliveries were not happening during the height of the storm.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of I know that there were some people that they didn't even know there was a power outage. They just kept living their lives, ignorantly blissed to the fact that nobody had power. And then there was no sunshine, and then there was no more batteries.
I see we have someone on Zoom who has a comment, has a hand raised. Joel Rudno.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just wanted to reinforce what George and others were saying about tuning the garage door. We recently had experienced that issue about opening the garage door, and we had someone come out and service the door and learn something. In addition to the inherent weight of the garage doors here, I learned that they soak up water in the kind of storms that we've had, and the weight increases by up to 30% just from the moisture. And even with power, our garage door opener was incapable of lifting the door. And it really is important to have a regular service of the garage door and get those springs tuned, regardless of the power outage factor. So that really is a very important point here. They're big doors. And in storms like we've had, their weight increases. Thanks.
Thank
In
you.
fact, might add, the motor may not be able to open the garage door if it's so too full. What I did when that happened to my garage door, I went to J. Baker's and bought a gallon of, or 2 gallons of clear water preserving kind of lacquer, whatever it was, and sprayed that onto the garage door. And since then, it ever worked fine.
Good point. Thanks, Klaus. Paul Thompson on Zoom has his hand up.
Hi. Yeah, I just had a couple comments as I listened to the presentation, which was great. Thank you, everyone who was involved in that. One thing is, in terms of the different features offered by the different solutions that have been discussed, to some people, a really important feature is whether the backup system is completely autonomous. And that means that it will just, no one has to be at the home for things to keep going on. And so, if you spend time, if you're not regularly at your home, that's a big consideration. So you want the fridge to keep going. You want the internet to stay on. If like many people, you've got various internet devices and ways to monitor your home and things. So that's something to look for as a feature. That's generally, I mean, you get that certainly in a full solar plus battery solution. You would have that. In the small battery solutions that were discussed, you would not have that. So that's something to consider. Another thing is to be concerned about the power that all the different devices you have in your home draw in standby mode. It's not uncommon for a house to draw 300 watts nonstop without really anything going on per se. And that's 7 kilowatt hours a day. So you can see how that, if you don't take pains to make sure that you're not wasting power with lots of just all these little doodads, the bricks, all these little small loads, they do add up, especially if you've got a lot of little techie toys and things. So something to keep a close eye on is that the power that's consumed essentially doing nothing can be as much as the power that's actually doing functions you care about. So that should be taken into account. You can go online on PG&E website and it'll show you exactly hour by hour how much power your home uses. So that would be a way to get a sense of whether you need to find some ways to cut down the power usage or whether you're okay. Another thing I noted, Klaus mentioned how the lighting doesn't take very much power in your home. That, of course, is assuming you have LED lighting. If you've got incandescent lighting, that takes lots more power. So another good reason to go to LED lighting. Let's see, there's a question about the connection to of a portable generator to a large propane tank, your big 250-gallon propane tank that you have for your furnace. That may not be to code, so you definitely want to check in if that is allowed to be done per the regulations. And finally, in terms of the different the different major appliances that one can expect to use with any given solution, a few of them, like your hot water heater and your dryer, could be gas or they could be electric. And so if they're gas, they actually don't take that much electricity and you can conceivably use them off batteries and such. If they are electric, then you're probably not going to be able to run them off a battery, any kind of a battery solution that's it's a reasonable size. So anyway, those are just some comments I had. Again, thanks. It was a great presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Meri, I want to get David's question. I see David Leland's joined us. He's got his hand up. And Meri had something she wanted to say, but I'd like to just make a space saver for Meri to tell us a little bit at the end about how PG&E prioritizes restoring power when the lights have been out for a while and the storms continue. because we were all kind of waiting and wondering when it was going to get to us. And as it migrated south from the north end of the Sea Ranch, it seemed like it took a long time to get where I live on Moonraker. But let's have David's question and then any other hands that are up in the room. There's Lamar and somebody over there and Barbara. And Mark. So we've got a handful here. Let's run through those who have their hands up, and then I'd like to hear from Meri about PG&E. David.
Thank you, Jennifer. First of all, and thanks to all of you who put this presentation together. I know you put a ton of time into it, and it came off great. So good work. So my comment was on whole house surge protectors, which I haven't heard mentioned here, and it's related to the power outage question in terms of resilience. It's possible when power is restored after an outage that equipment in your house, like hot water heater or anything that has sensitive electronic gear in it, can be fried from the power surge when the power comes back on. This happened to me after PSPS during the 2017 Nuns fire here in Sonoma, and I know that there were a number of other people who had the same experience. And PG&E offered no love afterwards. They said that they had warned us that the power might go out, and if we weren't prepared, that was our problem. One solution to that, as I understand it, is a whole house surge protector, which just protects all of the sensitive electronic devices in your house when the power comes back on, should there be a surge. That's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. When we were building our house a couple of years ago, and I was purchasing the appliances from Pardini's, the gentleman, I think it was the owner of Pardini's actually, said that the best $150 I could spend was on a whole house surge protector, and they're about $150, and it's less than an hour of an electrician's time. If you don't have one, get one. Most of the appliance calls that Pardini has on the coast are due to power surges taking out appliances. All of our, cool ovens and stuff have lots of sensitive electronics in them, and they are sensitive when there is a voltage surge. That being said, PG&E is actually doing work. We've got a PG&E rep here. Maybe she'll speak to that. Those big ugly things that they put on Pine Meadow, those are actually voltage regulators. And we have not had a lot of those on the coast. And that has contributed to when there's a surge like that your appliances suffer. Those voltage regulators, those new voltage regulators, are designed to mitigate that. They're big sponges. So when there is a surge of electricity, it sucks it up. It's their big capacitor, and then it kind of levels the electricity back out again. However, to be on the safe side, hire an electrician, get it installed. It's not that expensive.
Hi, excellent presentation. Could you comment a bit about the efficiency of solar panels used with standalone batteries in various weather conditions, sunny, cloudy, and so forth? How well do those work?
I have one comment about that because I've been looking at them. I think it depends on the, you're talking about the little portable panels, right? Yeah, I think it depends on the panel manufacturer, and that the efficiency is probably not anywhere near what you'll get from a roof mounted panel. And it really, at the end of the day, I think from what I'm seeing is, how big of a battery do I want to charge, and how fast do I want to recharge that battery if there is, so if I have a solar charging cell. And then it's really just how many of them do I need to get the charging time down to a time period that's reasonable, because you can usually put them in parallel to increase the current flow into the battery.
One of those panels, roughly 3 foot by 5 foot in size, would collect about somewhere between 1 and 2 kilowatt hour on a sunny day.
The conversation is turning to how powerful are these solar chargers? And the question in the audience was how much power does the new Tesla roof generate
per square foot. And
per square foot?
I don't know.
It all depends on their orientation to the sun. If they're south facing, they, are 100%, in terms of the energy that they'll produce. But if they're east or west facing, then they're not going to be as efficient. But in terms of how much they produce, it all depends on their facing and the size of the roof.
So if you have 10 panels, so the question was, how much do you collect with a solar PV system in principle? If you have 10 collectors of 3x5 size, which is a typical size, and 10 good collectors in sea range, in a normal orientation, facing maybe a little bit less west of south and at 18 degrees tilt on a 4 and 12 roof, you are collecting 5,000 kilowatt hours per year. So if you have 20 collectors, it's 10,000 kilowatt hours. If it's, that's a good rule of thumb that is within maybe 10%, 20%. That would be the same thing. It would be the same thing. So just figure out the square footage of that roof and compare that to the square footage of 10 collectors of 3x5 size. So 3x5 is 15 times 10 is 150 square feet. So 150 square feet will collect about 5,000 kilowatt hours per year.
Excuse me. I don't have, I'm going to continue to hand the microphone to the other people, and then we can come back to you and continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. Thank you so much. This is sort of a footnote in the realm of what George calls thrive. There is something about a power outage that can be kind of fun too, actually. You remember, what it's like when all the lights go out and, you're watching TV. Well, one of the things that my husband David and I have discovered that is wonderful because it's there year round. Okay, sorry. Our little electric candles. We have about 30 of them spaced around our home. And the first thing you do is get the remote out, turn those candles out. You could call it on the way to the generator, lights the path. And guess what? It's cozy and romantic. 2 cents.
Comment.
Yeah.
We just got the tankless water heater installed to replace our inefficient propane heater with a pilot light always running on the water, and come to discover that it has an electronic ignition, which is great when everything's working just fine. But when the power goes out, we had no heat in the house and we had no hot water. And so I'm wondering, can you hook a battery up to a tankless water heater, or what is the demand for the energy at that point?
Yes, you can.
You can use this thing here, this switch, and connect the one breaker that services that unit to this here. Very easy to do, and then you can use it. Uses very little power.
And you can use a battery. So I have a Renai tankless hot water heater, and it has a battery backup on it. The battery backup is roughly this size. And, depending upon how often that cycles on and off, it will last for a couple of hours of hot water usage. So just be judicious.
Now back to the Tesla solar roof questions.
That was done.
Mainly, I just wanted to know, are there a number of companies that come to the Sea Ranch that would, if you already have solar panels and you have a place in your garage to put the panel, they can come, and does it matter what kind of generator or what kind of battery backup that you get? And how, is it a complicated job to connect them? Are the batteries are much smaller now, right?
So you can add storage to an existing solar system. You need to do it through a licensed contractor, permit Sonoma, PG&E all get involved, because at that point your grid tied solar system gets basically reconfigured so that you can run the house off solar when the grid is offline. Normal solar without storage gets turned off when the grid goes offline. So there's a big difference in the operating practices there. So, Sonoma County, PG&E, both get involved, but yeah, it's very doable. Lots of people are doing it right now.
This is just one more little one. I think it's real important. Generators generate what? Electricity, but mostly noise. So I just want to tell everybody that the Honda generators do not make noise anywhere compared to that blue bomb that you were showing us there that you buy at JR's. So if you buy a quality Honda generator, you won't regret it. You get smaller ones, they're real quiet. I put two together and you don't even hear them. And we have a friend that has the bigger one, and it's almost as quiet as the small ones. Because if
couldn't we, in other words, couldn't we just run
that generator,
it's
what
you don't want to use, so you're not wasting.
hello. I just want everybody to be, because that's the quickest thing you can do right today is just buy a generator and plug it in with cords, but get a quiet one because you'll just die with the noisy ones. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
And
Thanks for pointing that out.
and test it about once a month. Don't let it sit there for 2 years and then pull it out expecting it to work.
And the propane, if you run propane, they're cleaner and they don't get clogged carburetors. So that's something to think about too. I never use gas because it'll be a problem later. So if you can do that.
And gas absorbs moisture. Yeah, there's all kinds of problems with gas. Get a
God, we could do a whole program just on generators, huh? Okay, before we get a little bit too down in the weeds, I wanted to give Meri a moment to talk to us a little bit about how PG&E decides where to put the power on and how to deploy their resources. Just a couple of minutes, and then Meri's a sea rancher, and she can make herself available to people for additional questions and discussion.
Yeah, hey, everyone. My wife and I have been up here for about 1.5 years now, and we split our time because even though I'm retired, she's working full time between Berkeley and here. We love this place, but I need to give you a big fat caveat before I say anything about PG&E, because I'm not here as a rep. I'm here as a neighbor. I've been retired for about 5 years. And I started my career there on electric overhead crews doing tons of restoration and storm damage work. And I left as a director of something we called safety culture, which we were working on pretty hard at the time. So that's my deal. I'm not representing PG&E. Some of my knowledge might be a little bit outdated, but I wanted to, if I can be helpful to people about kind of the general ways that PG&E operates and responds, in particular to power outages, I'd be happy to do that. So I think a couple of things. First off, the way that PG&E learns about power outages is by people calling in. Some of our circuits are easily identified. We've got a whole electric control center where we can identify where outages take place, but we really confirm those outages by people calling in. So if your lights go out, first of all, the first thing you do is go check your panel, right? Because it might just be you. And maybe you have to flip a circuit or reset it or put a new fuse in if any houses are that old. And then the next thing you do is call PG&E and let them know I'm having an outage here. It's a pretty simple thing to do. And so the first thing that PG&E has to do is they have to go out and assess what's happening, right? I mean, the circuits work in a particular way and they have relays. Some of them, really jacked up for the fire hazard areas. But what happens is if the power goes out on a particular line, the line shuts down. And then either it stays shut down if it's in a high fire zone, because if they go back, it might do something, or if it's not in a higher fire zone, somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds, that relay is going to test the line again. And if it's open now and there's not an issue with it, the power will come back on. And if there is still an issue with the line, it'll shut down for good. So we always have fun in my family. With the power goes out, we start counting 30 seconds. If it comes back on, we're like, we're good. And if it doesn't, we're like, oh, we're not good. So that's something to think about. And again, and the technology is greatly improved even since I've been there. So there's a lot of equipment on the lines now that can report more accurately than us just knowing that the line is dead. But even with that said, the first thing that has to happen is an assessment. And that means a person has to go out there. And even if we know the circuit or the general area, we might not know the span or the pole or the tower. So somebody has to go out and evaluate what's actually happened. And that is not always easy. And a storm like this one that we had, this atmospheric river, which is the worst storm in California history. And guys, we've been a state since 1850, right? That can take days just to do assessment. I mean, if you all were here and anybody went driving down the road every once in a while, it was like, Mother Nature playing pickup sticks around here. The trees were everywhere. They were down. We couldn't get where we wanted to go. And imagine a crew or a troubleman. That's the first person that usually goes out, an individual called a troubleman, trying to get somewhere where trees are in their way. So the first priority is the safety of the public and the safety of our own employees, because that's critical, right? And so once there's an assessment about what's happening, the people or person who did the assessment will then decide what needs to happen, i.e. we need a crew out here, or let me just go back up here and close these cutouts and we're going to be good. And if they need a crew, they decide how big that crew needs to be and what type of equipment they might need to bring with them. In this last one, all over the state of California, we were using snowcats. And that's not a very common thing for PG&E to do, but we were running into the same things. You guys have all read stories about people stuck in Tahoe and 20 feet of snow on top of their homes and covering all of their vents, and there were a lot of issues with it. Anyway, I'm probably going on too long, but so they got to do the assessment. It's not an easy thing. It can be really complicated. It can take a couple of days. They have to determine based on what they find what is required in order to get the power restored. And then they need to prioritize, and they prioritize by an active hazard. So if there's a line down, that's the first place they're going to go. Then they prioritize by, getting critical infrastructure up and running. So hospitals and PD and fire departments and such, including gas stations and, community centers like what happened in Gualala. And then they look for where can they fix something that's going to bring the power back on for the biggest number of people. And if any of you looked at the outage map on PG&E during this storm, there were enormous outages throughout the service territory. So, and then they go about and do the best they can under the circumstances. So I hope that's helpful just in terms of priority.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I think that was helpful. We have to remember we are a small population.
So for those who have not seen the forum that was just on this past Tuesday with Sonoma County Supervisor Linda Hopkins, one of the speakers was Julie Bauer she's the manager of the Ocean Ridge Airport in Wallala. And she talked about the 400 PG&E workers that came and stayed on their airport and the mini community that sprung up. And so the time that it took for them to fix our infrastructure here, if she had not been host to that, it could have been weeks. So if you haven't seen that, I urge you to watch the video. It's on YouTube, like I mentioned before. But it's powerful to see how many different agencies work together in unity for our behalf as a community. So anyway, I just want to put that out there again.
Okay, I think we're getting to the point where we probably ought to wrap it up. And I know you're all excited and eager to see who's going to get these wonderful prizes. So I'm going to bring Rich up here to help me draw some names out of our very fancy receptacle, our paper bag.
Is it a can of beans, Rich?
Not yet.
It's beets. We know Rich likes beets.
And the winner is Cynthia Boogaloo. Boogaloo.
Boogaloo. All right.
Oh, come on, boogie up here. Vanna, would you give her?
Here you go. You get a poppy lantern,
Yeah.
rechargeable.
That's all right. Is that? Oh, that's. What is it?
It's a pop.
Poppy lantern and spotlight.
Always uses a blender. It has all sorts. No.
Wishful thinking, Rich. You're welcome.
The second winner is Ruth Ann Dick. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, she didn't
Must be
stay till
present
the
to
end.
win.
That's right.
Huh?
We keep moving right on. Oh, the next winner would have been Mark Godley.
He left too. Nothing. Zilch.
Godly.
Let's call him. This is blank. Tomenzo? Tomenzo? Hey.
Now you are an unofficial member of the Utilities Committee where that is required headgear.
Thank you for being.
And thank you for being here. That's a rechargeable headlamp.
One is the TSACONAS. Acona?
It's George.
Oh,
George. Well,
This is for Ohio State.
oh no. Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. This is the Michigan crowd.
And then a fist fight broke out.
Very much.
Thank you. Thank you. This is for our friend Einstein.
Always see the light with that. And that is, no, not yet. No. Yep. We have to wrap it up. Wait, but Rich, okay. Rich has got things, goodies for those of us who put our blood, sweat, and tears into this.
Thank you,
Beets, canned beets, pickled canned beets.
Well, the good thing is I've got a dinner party tonight, so now I know what we're having.
Oh, my goodness.
All you need is some Ritz crackers and you're good to go.
Thank you very much. Pickled beets.
Woo.
Pickled beets.
Linda's gonna wrap us up.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to announce the next forum, which is going to be Sunday, May 7th from 1 to 3 here. And the topic is coastal wildfire safety updates. And there's going to be different representatives that were here before talking about the changes in recommendations for us. So, and the last is the tradition for the Sea Ranch Forum is that we pick up our chairs and we put them on the racks over there. So keep up with the tradition. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Just like with the